Throughout the day today, we've hosted a seminar here in Hamilton to get our merchants more acquainted with NaviRetail and the pointers they might can give them to help them in their shops, their places of business. Our second segment at 1 o'clock then featured our landowners listening to the points that were brought to their knowledge, and many points were made here today, and some sharing between NaviRetail and our developers and landowners. So we're proud of that segment. Now that we enter the third segment of our seminar today, and NaviRetail is going to be addressing our council and myself and giving us some information about the work they've been doing on behalf of the city. So we're real proud of our seminar today. It's the first of its kind that's been held here in our city. We think it went very well on a trial basis. We hope to do this again before too long and let it grow to larger numbers and a bigger scale, maybe with the next presentation. We're proud to have it videoed today so it can be played back for our audits time and again. And at this time, I'm going to ask Casey Kidd, who represents NaviRetail, to come forward and do a presentation to the council. Casey.
Appreciate it, Mayor. I'll keep it, more informal and try to just kind of rehash all that we've accomplished today and some of the conversations that have been had, some of the questions that have been asked. One of the things that we started off this morning with is really getting everyone to understand some of the strategies that make for existing businesses being successful and also helping other existing businesses. And that was, I think, I wish there had been more people here to hear it, but I think that's something we've got to cultivate here, is this idea of everyone working together for the greater good, And so, and the phrase I kept using this morning was, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We talked about a lot of things like cross-marketing and how businesses can work together on events. Basically what they're doing, or what they should be doing, is helping each other to sell each other's goods and services. And so that means if you're, the example I gave this morning is there's a meadery that makes, they distill mead in Tupelo, and they partner with a restaurant to help them sell food. And so they don't produce food at this place, but they have a local restaurant bring in some boxed lunches and some things at brunch so that they can sell food-wise. And so that's helping out not one business, but two businesses. And that was the kind of concept that we're trying to encourage. In my experience, one thing that's really key to, I think, having thriving downtown type businesses and local businesses is having a good chamber and a solid chamber. And I think that's something that, everyone I met is great, but something to potentially look at growing here is working on growing the chamber where everybody's a member. They've got funding to hire a full-time person where it's not just 2 days a week. And I'm not putting that burden back off on the city. I'm saying that the cities that we work in that really have it going on, they've got a chamber that also has it really going on. And I'm not saying that it's a coincidence, because I don't think it is. I think that it really is that you've got to have someone at all times driving that existing business and some of these locally owned businesses. And that helps me do my job, because then I'm selling a town that's doing well and not a town that's got a bunch of vacant buildings and a bunch of businesses that have gone out or whatever. And so I think that is a key component. I think what they're doing with the chamber is a really good job. I like Ashley a lot, but I just think that she needs some help. You need some more people like her is what you need. And I don't know exactly how we do that, how you find those people and convince them to give up free time that they could have with their families or whatever to do some volunteering or even making it in a paid position. But I will say that I think that is really key, is to kind of cultivate that chamber and help them grow, because that will only net you guys more businesses that are thriving, that are remitting more sales tax dollars. It's an instant return on investment, in my opinion, just because the more that businesses do well, more money in the city's bottom line. So that was the first thing this morning, and then this meeting that we just had I think went really well. I think it was good, the amount of attendance that you had from the property owners. I mean, you take into consideration the amount of land that I know I probably could tally up in my head's well over 200 or 300 acres of land. And so you're talking about, there's a lot to work with there. And so we'll have to go back and look at, well, how much are they willing to take for it? Does the math work or does it not work? And so we'll be doing a lot of our homework to figure out, does their land make sense for X, Y, and Z? But I do think that that is something that everyone that was here today seemed very in favor of doing business. And so I can't promise you that it'll be the right number that they want, but at the same time, I can promise you that everybody in here today seemed like they were ready to do business. And that's good. I've worked in communities where that's not the case. And so, believe me, you got a good group so far. So, we'll find out. We talked about some other things very briefly, but just having a plan for future development, that's where I'll be working, I guess, with some of you guys to make sure that there's adequate infrastructure and utilities and things like that for some of the sites I'll be looking at, make sure there's no issues with anything like that. If we go the route of a larger scale development, like I mentioned earlier, we're working on one in central Mississippi that's about $65 million, about 35, 40 acres, give or take. We're using a TIF there, and basically what happens there is we're offsetting the cost of the land acquisition in this tax increment financing deal. And so then the developer starts on this deal at net zero, because then basically the cost of land is built back into this TIF. And I'm not saying that that's something that we're proposing here. I have to take a look at what the numbers look like. But I will say, I'm going to come back to you guys and rely on y'all to be able to determine, all right, this is a make it or break it for retailers X, Y, and Z, and we can use code words or whatever we need to be able to talk about it openly. But I will say that we know well enough to know when it's not going to happen because of X, Y, and Z, and when it is going to happen. And sometimes that involves using some types of incentives. And so I'm just kind of preparing you now for that, just in case if we come back with an interested prospect or several, hopefully, and then we were trying to do on this deal, but the numbers don't quite work out. There's ways to fix that where people are not giving their property away, but it might involve the use of incentives or what have you. The other thing that came up just a few minutes ago was the idea of the hotel. That was something that the ramp had asked about. They were curious about whether or not that was being discussed, and I told them it was being discussed. I personally have met with some hotel developers, but the first question they all have is, do you have a hotel feasibility study? And so that's just kind of the next logical step, if that is something you guys want to pursue, is having that document so that when I have these discussions, here's the offer, here's what we got to market. And that is, the data itself is just different than what we normally collect. And not every city wants a hotel, but it sounds like after today, y'all have got some need for a hotel. I know she was talking about, when they have their conferences, she said they fill up hotels far and wide. And so they fill up all the ones here, and then they go to Fulton, and I guess Winfield, some of the other ones as well. And so if that's the case, then obviously you do need one. But we need to justify that. And part of what we would do in a feasibility study is have a conversation with the ramp and get them to send us a letter or whatever on their stationery that says, hey, this is how many room nights we need. And that'll be part of what we put together in that package, is being able to show, hey, we've got just one business here that needs this many room nights, and I'm sure there's other reasons for people to stay in a hotel here as well, but just one business alone that could fill up half a hotel, I mean, that might be a big deal for the developers that we would be presenting this to. So that's some information that we need to get if y'all decide to move forward with that. The main thing that I want to emphasize is that today is a good first step for the city to be able to connect with the people in the city. And I think the more that happens, the more successful we all are. And I think that if we can do more things like what we did today, I think what you're going to see is more things. A lot of the conversations that happened today, or the questions that were asked, people start talking. And that was one of the things that was said. What was the gentleman I just met with? Clarence.
I wanted you to reiterate those numbers, the 44,000 people that show up at our door to shop, and how much money is involved and what the leakage is to other communities of those dollars.
So,
Just recap those real quick for us, if you will.
so when you start with the amount of money that's spent by the shoppers here, you end up at about $500 million. And so that's with 44,000 people, which is not a huge trade area. It's still a small trade area, but when you start with 44,000 people, you get a total retail spending of give or take $500 million. And then Hamilton only supplies them with $200 million of what they want and need. So that leaves $300 million going somewhere else. And we're all smart enough to know kind of where it's going. We don't, even without the data, we all know, the direction it heads. But at the same time, $300 million is a huge chunk of change. And something we were talking about even over lunch is that we don't expect to capture all $300 million, but even if we captured half of it, just $150 million of that would be a huge addition to the city's budget each year. And so it's clear that there's opportunity here. It's clear that dollars are leaving. And so now we've got to figure out how to capture them. And I think by doing so, like days like today where we're meeting with some of these property owners and getting in front of them and hearing even conversations they've had in the past, I think is huge. And whether I'm involved or not, I think this is something the city really needs to move forward, is that having these conversations or meetings or whatever you want to have, or a strong chamber to do it, but having someone that can connect with these people on a regular basis. Because I think there's a lot of things that came out today that, I don't know how much people talk when I'm not here, but I know how much they talk today. And so I think this idea of networking is really big. And I think that goes for existing businesses, and I think that also goes for property owners that, some of these new businesses might have interest in the property. And so there was a lot of good talks, at the end, a lot of people that came by and said, whatever we need to do, we'll do. And so everyone seems very agreeable. But I think we've got to get everyone on the same page and keep everyone updated. And that's something on our end we can do, but I will say a lot of communities that we've worked in, a lot of that is facilitated by a good chamber and having someone that can devote time and effort into that. Even when I'm away or at a trade show, there's someone still that, 5 days a week, they're connecting with property owners and businesses and making sure everyone's doing all right, making sure that everybody is getting the information they need. It sounded like from the Captain D's situation that was brought up earlier, that was just a lack of them providing the right information. And if it's really that simple, and I'm not saying it is, but if it's really just a matter of they didn't have the information they needed to give them, we can fix that. But I have to know that that's a problem first, and that's why we do the workshops like we did today, is to find out what are the struggles that they're dealing with. Because talk to Captain D's all the time, talk to KFC, some of the ones that came up today. All these names that were thrown out there are people that I talk to. But if I find out that the issue is not anything regarding the property, it's just they just showed them the wrong information or bad information or whatever, didn't even have any information, these are problems that we can fix. And so that's where I think having a dialogue with people like, that were in this last workshop and the one that this morning, I think is huge for the city. And I can't emphasize that enough. I think in the scheme of moving forward, we got plenty of information to scale out something very similar to what we're doing in Central Mississippi, having it anchored by a large anchor tenant. And so what I'm going to try and do is really figure out what would be the best site for X, Y, and Z. I don't mind telling you, we've also talked to a fast food restaurant that's very interested. He was already looking in Fulton, and I think I've kind of moved the needle a little bit, at least to get him over here and look again. He's been here before, prior to you guys hiring us, and so I talked with him again, and he's willing to come back and take another look. And so at the end of the day, I can't promise you anything's going to come of that, but being able to get them back here, restart some of these conversations. Some of the ones that they brought up today happened 10, 15 years ago. And so then we're trying to reboot some of these conversations that might have happened, over a decade ago. But that's something we're able to do. I just have to know kind of how things were left and who they talked to, and so that way we know how to move forward. Another thing that was brought up was the lack of the KFC, and off the cuff just said, I'm sure there was one at one point in time. In every small town in America there's a KFC, and a large part in Alabama a Dairy Queen as well. And so then when I see that these businesses are no longer here, I usually suspect they were here at some point, Now I have to find out, well, why did they leave? Because then it's, and Laney, I'll let you give your example of the other town that we're working in Alabama with their McDonald's situation, but they've got one very similar to that same situation, probably not in the details, but having one that left, and now we're trying to get them back, so fill them in on that.
So I was just explaining to the last group, a lot of times if there's data to support the fact that your market could support a specific retailer, a lot of times it's not the data that's wrong, it's the way that we present the data to the retailer. And so Casey has a lot of experience in dealing with retailers specifically and being able to show them the parts of data that are attractive to the retailers, which is really important, that you know which kinds of things to pull out that will look good, and then maybe which things maybe not to highlight that don't look as good about the market. And so part of that is just being able to tell the story of if something went wrong, what went wrong. And so we've got a client in another part of the state that doesn't have a McDonald's, and they just want a McDonald's really bad, and it would be a huge deal for quality of life for this community to have a McDonald's. And so when we took the site to the site selector at McDonald's, they were like, well, why is there a McDonald's here? Like, I see a lot of other things. And someone said, well, we used to have one, then they closed. And at that point, the site selector was done. Like, they were shutting us down. Like, if McDonald's didn't work there, then we're definitely not opening another store if it shut down. And so I don't really know how you're supposed to start these conversations, but I said, well, let me explain to you what happened. The McDonald's was owned by two franchisees, a husband and a wife, and they went through a divorce. And one of them kept the McDonald's in the divorce, and the other convinced the rest of the town not to go there and eat anymore. And so with half of the population of the town not able to eat there anymore because they were resisting, it couldn't be supported anymore. They didn't have the market that they needed to eat there to stay in business, and so they shut down. And so it really is important, the context of, maybe we look at the KFC, and KFC is going to tell us we're not coming back there, we've been there before and it didn't work. But maybe there's a reason. Maybe it was a franchisee that didn't work out, or an owner that,
There needs to be a story, and that's what, doing the things that we did today is so to help us figure out what that story is. Because the last thing I want to have is us to be in the situation we were in with McDonald's and have to walk up to them and say, well, we don't know what the story is. And so then having something to back up, hey, the market's solid, but here's what happened there. And it has nothing to do with the market. It's the last thing we want them to do is to lose any trust in the market. If the market's solid, they'll do it all day long. But sometimes the market doesn't matter. If that's the situation, that's what happens, then we end up in a situation where they're like, well, why would we do it again? And then we have to, work twice as hard sometimes to convince them to come back to the market. And so that's where a situation, I don't know what the deal was with KFC, and I can explore that later, but that would be a question they're going to ask me. So I better have a response ready for when they ask me, well, why did they leave the first time, and why are you wanting us to put another store there again? And so as long as I've got a good response for that has nothing to do with the market, they'll be good to go. So just a lot of today was just having these conversations and to figure out, the people involved, who I'm going to deal with when there is an interested party, getting to meet them, shake their hand, give them a business card. That way, when I call them up, it's not the first time they're ever meeting me or hearing my voice. So that was a huge accomplishment for today. I also think, and I mentioned this morning, success breeds success. And so whether it's this property owner or that property owner, if one's being successful, chances are that next one's going to be successful too, and the one right after that, and they'll fall like dominoes. But we have to keep the traction going. We have to keep the interest going. And so that's what we'll be doing on our end, picking out through some of these sites to find out what is the best fit for X, Y, and Z. Can we do a 30-acre development, or we have to piece it out and do a smaller development for each of these tenants? And so that's something we'll be looking at. And again, it all boils down to numbers. If they want, $8 billion for their land, it's just, some numbers don't pencil. And that's where we'll have some discussions with them to find out if they are reasonable for what we're trying to accomplish, and if they're not. I'm trying to think anything else that I want to highlight.
It's a really exciting time, too, to be a part of visioning what this development might look like and who you might could attract, because another thing that we see a lot with site selectors on the retail side is that they don't even look at your market first. They want a map of who else is in the market. Like, if it's, say we're talking to Jack's, they're like, well, is KFC there? Or Taco Bell, or they look for other names. And so what's exciting about this is once we land a tenant, then there's some momentum. We're saying, okay, well, this
Our
national
job gets easier.
retailer just located last year. And then they're like, okay, well, if it was good enough for these guys, then we better take another look at this market. So just the first couple of really recent tenants are really exciting and make our job a lot easier.
Absolutely. We've had interest, and I suspect that in the restaurant sector, the home improvement sector, and what was the third one? Grocery stores. All three sectors that we've had interest from. And so what I'm looking for now is, do we piece all this out, or do we come up with enough acreage to put it all together and say, all right, here's our 30-acre development. And so that's going to fall mostly on the property owners there, and who's willing to deal and who's not. And I don't think, either way, I think there's enough property here that we can find the land. It's just what makes the most financial sense. Because then I've got to go and sell it back to 8 different people when we come up with this. Typically what we do when we do pick a site, if we go that route, we have an architect on staff, and I will send it over to her to draw up a site plan of this. And that'll probably be the next thing that I show to you guys, probably individually instead of as a group. But I would want y'all to kind of look at what we're envisioning and make sure that's kind of, what's in y'all's minds as well. And I promise you, it most likely will be, just because I think some of these names will be attractive. Aside from that, the only other recommendation I have is, just the hotel feasibility study. There's just only so far that you can chase these without having the data to back it up. And it sounds like there's even some things I didn't know until today, meeting with the ramp, that there's more of a need than I thought. And I already thought there was an opportunity, but it sounds like there's a bigger opportunity than I thought before. And so if that's the case, we need to put that, pencil to paper and be able to show that to some people. I know based on even some of the businesses that have located recently, some of those have a hospitality wing to them. So then, you've already gotten this business. All right, well, this same company also builds hotels. And so then that's kind of what I'm thinking in the back of my mind, is we need to get some data to be able to show them, hey, yeah, there's more opportunity here than you think. And honestly, had I not had that conversation with her, I wouldn't have known that there was that much opportunity for some of the conferences they host. But now I know that, and I know now to investigate that further and put the pencil to paper and say, all right, here's how much opportunity there is for hotels.
And the validity of that is that the route didn't just locate here last year. They've been here a number of years now.
Right.
And the conventions keep coming and keep coming.
And growing, I'm sure.
And they've turned people away because they couldn't house them if they showed up. And
She showed me some of the drawings that they've done and what they've got planned, and it looks really cool. And so, even things like this, I know it's not retail, but I market stuff like this all the time just to be able to show, hey, this place is growing. And it's not just, obviously it helps, like Laney's talking about, retail growth when we can advertise, well, Jack's just landed, that's going to help us to sell Zaxby's or whoever we're talking to. But just growth in general. Things are happening here, and that's what, the more of this type of stuff that I can get, the better for all of us, just because now I've got even more things to market. And this, again, this is not something that we would create because we're not the ramp. At the same time, if they give us this is something I want to take with me to trade shows and be able to show them, hey, there's investment being made here. And we want you to invest as well, but look at all the other people that are currently investing. And that just helps to generate more interest, more traction, which lands more businesses for you guys. Any questions on any of that? That's a 30,000-foot overview of what happened today, but there was a lot of conversations, and we can talk offline too. But really, think about the things that I've mentioned, really keeping these conversations with the property owners and the existing businesses going. I think that everyone seemed to enjoy it. I think the more of these types of things that we do, success breeds success. We're just going to keep seeing it over and over. And the more things that I get like this that I can take with me on the road, it's a huge deal.
So like that right there, what she's talking about, if we say we're looking at a sports complex, if we had a draw, that'd be something to get to you, that that you could pitch to hotels and
Absolutely.
restaurants and.
You host a couple of ball tournaments here, they gotta stay somewhere.
Sure.
And so, you know, I'll have to look at the total number of rooms available here, but I know for what they were talking about, they couldn't all stay here. And so then, you know, you start stacking up. I don't think there's one event that can keep a hotel up and running, but you start stacking 4 and 5 different events and 4 or 5 different reasons for people to come into town, you can fill a 65-room property up pretty quickly. And that's kind of, you know, that's why, you know, I think that y'all really do need to investigate that, because there's more reasons that I thought existed here for people staying in a hotel that I'm learning more and more about as each day goes by.
I don't know that we've actually put it in our minutes and voted to do the feasibility study. We haven't done that, but we've verbally agreed to get one. Is that correct, guys?
Yes.
That we've agreed to get a hotel feasibility study done. So we'll go ahead and
Yeah.
act on that. We need, since we're spending that money, we have to vote to spend the money for one, but we'll put that in the agenda and get it done quickly.
Yeah, and I didn't want to push y'all on that, but I think that,
No, it needs to be done.
It's starting to
We've
appear
all
that-
agreed that we need one.
yeah. And I think that y'all are, you know, the interest that I'm already seeing and the interest that you're going to have even after the information I've learned today, it's just going to grow from there. I remember, like, we had lunch downtown today, and I remember I'd been here, I think before y'all hired us, I'd been here maybe 5 years ago. And it's night and day different, like, of how far it's come in such a short time. I know 5 years might seem like a long time sometimes, but y'all have come a long way. And I think that this is just adding to, you know, what we have going forward, and gives me more to market, because then I can go and say, well, look what happened the past 5 years in Hamilton, and I can only imagine what will happen in the next 5 years. And so that's where I think you got a good group. I felt really good about today. I felt really good about the conversations we had. I just think we need to have more of them. I think we need to have more people involved. I think the more involvement and engagement that we can get from the community, I think the better.
One of the things you brought up today that I thought was interesting, to the point of being, you know, spot on, is having a business yet not operating in the hours when your customers can actually come in your doors and shop. I think that's so spot on that I could almost, and I don't want to point any fingers, but I could almost go shop by shop and say, the customers that fit this business can't shop in these hours.
Exactly.
This business, because the doors are locked. And a lot of times that really hurts a business that's not offering the correct hours. And 8 to 5 seems nice for everybody, but unfortunately every business can't operate 8 to 5. And some of them have got to offer 10 to 8, you know, something like that. 10 in the morning to 8 at night, to get all the shoppers in their door. And
You got to be open to make money, and that's the simple truth.
so
of
I
life.
thought that was a real good point you made, and when you went through that with the merchant section, I thought that was spot on. And when you showed that sign of that business saying, we're open.
It wasn't in Hamilton, I promise.
Yeah, we're open these hours, and we're not open on Saturday, you know, and you quickly pointed out that those customers couldn't possibly shop in those hours. It makes a great point.
Well, and these are things, what we see a lot of is, you know, chambers will a lot of time host events, and they'll have little seminars like what we do, maybe not always hiring us, but have seminars they host where they talk about things like this. And it could be that, you know, you have one a month or something like that, and a get together, and you get all the local businesses together and say, hey, you know, we've noticed that, you know, there's a lot of people downtown and no place to go, and so what if we adjust the hours a little bit? And it's not that, I think the perception is that you have to work more hours if you're going to stay open past 5, but you don't. You just change your hours so that you're working your normal 6 or 7 hours or whatever you're used to working, but move it back so that people, when they get off work, can still patronize your business and come and shop. But if they're at work, like I am between 8 and 5, chances are I'm not shopping at your store. And that really is the issue there, is that, you know, there's a lot of places I'm sure I would love to shop here, but if I'm at work at 4 o'clock and you just close, you just lock the door at 3:45, there's no chance that I'm going to be spending dollars there that day. And so that's where, you know, it's just a logical solution to the problem, and I think sometimes it takes people saying that to get them to realize, well, maybe I should, you know, stay open to 6 or 6:30. I'm not saying you got to be open to 9 o'clock, but if you know your biggest crowd is people when they get off work, don't close at 4:30.
Right. And you made a point today also about your Amazons and this kind of thing. People that are interested in a shopping experience don't want to do it with Amazon. They want to go to a place that's known to have these good things, and several of them, and you can find it or get recommended to it by the shop owner. And I think people still look for a shopping experience. Or, you know, we went and we did this, we got our products, then we dined, and we came back home kind of satisfied. And I would like to see Hamilton have that atmosphere, that the shopping experience was pleasant, and then if they want a meal on top of it, they can go to a sit-down restaurant with their family and eat it. I think that would be ultimate for us and something we want to do.
The jewelry store owner, what was his name that we met today?
Eddie.
We talked to him a little bit after lunch. We saw him on the street, and he came over and spoke, and he said, you know, as bad as it is to say, COVID was the best thing that happened to his business, because then, you know, keeping a lot of dollars at home, and people just don't buy jewelry online. You know, there are a lot of them, you want to come in and look at it, and he said that customer service and that personal touch that they offer has kept a lot of people right here buying jewelry. And so I think you've got to cultivate that and spread that amongst the local businesses, so that that's everyone's mindset of how they operate and how they're going to do business. We're going to be open when our customer wants to buy something, and we're going to be there to help them when they don't know what they want to buy. Because you don't get that online, and you never will. And that's one thing that I think that Amazon has become a beast in and of itself, but it's still not able to do everything. And I think being able to go in a clothing store and try something on, or when you don't know what you want and there's someone behind a counter to help you, even the auto parts stores, that's another thing about AutoZone. You'll never get that experience because, and I'm not saying that's the most experienced mechanics you'll ever experience in AutoZone, but if you don't know exactly what brand is best, or if you don't know what kind of belt you need, there's someone at each counter, whether they know everything or not, that can help you with that. And that really is, that's where brick and mortar is going to always have its place, because you just don't get that online. I bought I think it was made by I don't know, it was a cheap brand of serpentine belt I bought once, and it threw it right off I'm talking like maybe 20 miles down the road. And so I went back, and he said, well, that's the first problem, is you bought that, I think it was Daco or something like that, some cheap brand. He's like, you need to buy a Gates belt. I did. That thing got probably 200,000 miles, never changed it. But it took him, I didn't walk in there knowing the difference between the brands, but he's like, well, this is the belt you need right here. And you're just not going to get that kind of experience online. And people read reviews and whatnot, but really, you can trust someone, and you walk in and shake their hand and look them in the eye, and they say, hey, I can tell you what you need right now. And that's a good way to do business. And I think you've already got a lot of people downtown right now that are doing that. I just think we need more of that. We need that atmosphere here, because I promise you, word's getting out, and people are going to start coming here by the truckloads. You got a cool downtown. We both enjoyed it for lunch today, just walking around, talking to people. It's a very friendly atmosphere. I mean, it was kind of cool to be walking down the street, people coming up and talking to you. I mean, that's a cool environment. And so I think that if we keep on this track, y'all are really going to see something happen here.
I think sometimes it's easy. We're in the business of opportunity, and so when we come here, our eyes are open for what are your voids and what things are we missing and how can we help you recruit more. And so it's easy sometimes I feel like our pitches almost feel negative because we're telling you what you need, but there's so much to be celebrated here. We have communities across the United States, West Coast to East Coast, that would die for your downtown. I mean, it's just so
Because theirs are boarded up.
and activated, and so retailers look at things like this. They want to feel, is your city investing in itself? And if your city isn't investing in itself, if you don't have leadership that really cares, if you don't have a council that's progressive enough to want to grow, you know, a lot of cities in America, especially small town America right now, are saying, we don't want to grow. And so you've got something really, really, really special here. Your property owners, I don't know how they act to you guys, but they were excellent, and they were full of dialogue, and some of them had already talked to retailers independently. And so for us to be aware of those conversations, and for you all to be aware of those conversations, I just think that it's going to be a really exciting year, and there's a lot of possibility. So I'm the cheerleader of the two of us, but I'm really excited about it for you guys, because you really do have something. Not every community is like this.
We love testimonies.
Any other questions for us? Again, I'll keep y'all updated, and I can certainly work with you to get something in place for the hotel feasibility study, but well, a lot of good information came out of this, and information I didn't have prior to today, and that's where nothing beats, and I wish it did.
How
man,
many
like-
copies of that, original copies of that feasibility study are normally done? Do you know how many copies we would normally get?
I mean, we can do as many as y'all want. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a long document, take up a lot of paper, but, you know, we can print as many as
I
needed.
know, I've seen one, they're about so thick.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in there, but we can get y'all as many copies as needed.
Casey, how long, once we do one, it's good for 5 years?
I'd say, you know, unless something major happens, give or take. I mean, one thing, I will say this, if you land a hotel, you might want to update it, because then you've changed the market somehow. I would say until the market changes, you know at one point in time, this was the case. And as it sits right now, obviously, we could survey that and say, all right, well, this is how it currently sits. But if in a year we bring in a hotel, the market's changed entirely just because it's all inventory. So if you start with 500 rooms today and we put another 100-room hotel in here, well, now you got 600 rooms. And so the supply-demand changes pretty drastically with those. But we can cross that bridge when we come to it. I think the main thing is just getting it done, getting in front of some people that need to see it, and then hopefully that we have a reason to change it in a year or year and a half from now.
How long does it take for a study to be done?
Generally speaking, we usually quote out 2 to 3 months, just because we usually, if not just two of us, but sometimes even more than two, will come and do a visit just for that, go and have some conversations with industries, with local hotels, with people like the Ramp. I mean, just really finding out what is the need for rooms here. And so we can look at numbers, but there's things that won't show up, like the Ramp having that many, you know, conferences that have that many people in town. That's not always going to show up on the data. And so that's where I need to have conversations with people like that to find out just how much is the need, how big is the need. And so we worked on one in Washington State and found that there's a Walmart distribution center, and they had a ton of room nights. And they were just going to another town. But when we sat down and figured it up, I mean, they alone could not fill up the property, but they could put it in it pretty quickly with just their executives flying in and out, and people that were at the DC for one reason or another. There's usually always someone in town for Walmart, this particular town that we're working in. And so even if it's, you know, 5 or 10 room nights a week, we're whittling our way towards a 65-room property being filled up, you know, in the course of a year, at least 80%, maybe 70 to 80% filled. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, is just what is the demand. That way we can size it up and say, all right, this is a golden opportunity here. And then we can take that and put that verifiable information in front of someone and say, hey, here's the deal. And you know, I don't think that there will be any issue for any developer. I just think you've got to size it up and be able to show that to them, other than just saying, well, Hamilton's a great town, you should come build a hotel here. It is a great town, but I think you've also got to be able to show what is the need, what is the demand, and that sort of thing.
Can you remind me, what's the cost of the?
It's like $8,000. I mean, that's just pretty straight across the board what we charge. And that's just, whether you go with us or you go with another company, that's just kind of the going rate. And that is because we do make a special visit for that. Well, most likely there's a friend of mine that I'll work with on this one because he's out of Nashville. You've not met him yet, but you need to meet him. He's so well connected in that industry. His name's Jay Patel, great guy. He's young like I am, but he just knows everybody. And so usually when I get him to work on it.
Is it a pretty universal study? I mean, that most all hotels chains can
It
use?
is,
Like
but-
if somebody comes in like Holiday Inn and says, well, we see the study, but we need this, this, and this, something that can be edited, added to, or?
It is, and so it can be customized, and so what we'll typically propose, we've done in the past like specific brands, but usually what we'll propose is what type of hotel. And so there's like economy, there's mid-scale, there's luxury hotels, and so obviously we won't be pitching a Four Seasons here. Sorry, but Four Seasons is out. But we will kind of craft it for the type of hotel that we would be looking for, not necessarily the brand. The one that we did in Pontotoc, my hometown, is for an extended stay hotel. So it's about half and half, where Pontotoc has a lot of industry and they have a lot of people that are there for an extended period of time. And so Ashley Furniture employs 4,000 people. As you can imagine, like when they bring in a new system or whatever, there's 10 room nights a week if someone's going to be there for 6 months while they're training the employees on that, and they have to go to Tupelo. They also, in Pontotoc, they had at their Walmart a training center for their managers. And so then they have it, like I think one per every district, however big their districts are, they put a center, one of their Walmarts, where they train all their managers and their supervisors, and they kind of go to the schoolhouse. It's beside the Walmart, but they're usually there for a few weeks at a time. And so then, right now, they're having to go to Tupelo, and from my conversations with Walmart, they don't like that because they go to Tupelo, do a little rowdy, and then they're more of a liability than they are an asset. So if we put one a little bit closer, they might not go as far and get as rowdy as they normally would if they were in the same town that they were working in. So that's what we're working on
If
there.
I'm not mistaken, Pontotoc has a training center for their Walmart employees.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is they've got one. It's usually about 50 at a time, and we'll go and train there.
Yeah. Call it the academy.
Yeah, but they'll fill that hotel up really quick. I mean, that's just, when you start piling up all the needs for a hotel, you get to a full property pretty quickly. I mean, if you're only talking 65, 70 rooms, you got 10 here, 10 there, 10 there, and then your random transient travelers that just stop by that you don't know about, you end up with at least a 50 to 60% occupancy. And so then, we got something workable just right there. And so that's why I want to investigate that and find out just how many room nights do we have and kind of size up what type of property, how big, that sort of thing, so that we can get out there and advertise it.
What percentage of occupancy does a motel need to survive?
Generally speaking, it all goes back to, it's not just occupancy, it's the return on investment. So say for instance on like a $10 million property, if you've got to put up 30% for your bank to lend against it, and banks are finicky, especially when it comes to hotels. A lot of the work that we do on hotels is not for the city, it's for the bank. It's not even for the developer, it's for the bank, because they've got to take that to the bank and say, hey, this is a riskier type investment, but here this says that it's feasible and it's going to be a profitable endeavor. And so when you go to the bank, you've got to be able to back up that if they're willing to accept 30% on $10 million, that you got to convince them, hey, I still need $7 million more, on top of that, and whether or not they're going to get stuck with this property, or what is the likelihood that they're going to get stuck with this property if it forecloses. And so that's where it's all a balancing act. I will say, like, a lot of the occupancies that we see with profitable hotels are around 60 to 70%, and so that's usually a safe place to be. I'm not saying that's the most profitable hotel, but that's at least a safer place to be than if you were at 40 or 50%. And so I would estimate, I haven't done the study, but I know when we did in Pontotoc, what we do is we project out the average rate of return, what kind of a range of what developers are typically willing to accept, and then we show what is the rate of return for the property as it sits. And so what we're doing there, it came in, I think the average was like 18%, and they came up with 13%. And so what we're doing there is we're going to do a TIF so that we can basically abate some of the property taxes back to that developer to compensate for the other 5%. So over that 10-year holding period that this is all based on, we would be getting them 18% by them abating these property taxes. And so it's a process, as is everything with government, but at the same time, we're able to go back to the developer and say, hey, this is the average for the market, and this is what we're able to get you, and have those numbers match.
As far as cities our size, downtowns, what do you see in other towns as far as vacant buildings, percentages, and how many,
It's booming right now. I mean, you chime in, because I know like Lainey loves the downtown thing, and you've worked on a lot of downtowns, but I feel like there's an uptick right now, and I think COVID does have a lot to do with that. I think what happened is we realized when everything shut down that we don't have to go to Tupelo to get everything that we need. And while we might like to do that from time to time, we don't absolutely have to go over there to get everything. There are places in Hamilton that sell X, Y, and Z. And I think the realization of that has caused a lot of businesses that were in a downtown market to thrive, because then they've got customers they've never seen before. And so that's why I'm saying is just, let's keep this train going as long as we can, just because I think that the traction for that is there. There was several people in the restaurant we had this morning for lunch. And so if that's on a random Wednesday in January, I can't imagine, during peak season, or if y'all had a ball tournament or something like that. I mean, that's where you got to start with a baseline that is profitable, but then you throw everything else on top of that, it just becomes a cherry on top. So if you've already got businesses that thrive without your ballpark, just think if you had a tournament, or if the ramp had a conference or something like that, it just goes up from there. But at least you're starting from a profitable point instead of a not profitable point, and hoping that this conference does something or this ball tournament brings in enough people. But I think we're seeing that across the board. That's not just in the South. That's just a lot of small towns are thriving because of COVID. And so that's good for y'all. And that's primarily where we work. So it's good for us too, just because that's where we like to work. That's our bread and butter. And it's nice to see that, hey, there's some things happening in towns with 7,000, 8,000 people that weren't happening 2 years ago.
We've got a list of complimentary numbers that are given to us recently by our accountant, our city accountant, pointing out the year we've had.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like for you to see a list of that, because it's...
Is that, Angela, is that what you sent, or?
No, this is
Something
something
different.
more recent. You don't have it.
I was about to say, I know that I got some of it from
It's
her.
pretty
but-
impressive.
Gotcha.
He said some of those numbers he pointed out were history-making numbers as far as he was concerned.
Well, that's good news. Good news for y'all.
Yeah, it is. And we don't want to take too much credit for it, but we are thankful for
Mhm.
it, because it could not hold up, but this past year, we had some really good numbers.
Well, and
And it was pointed out by our own accountant.
that's where we try to encourage, and it's not, obviously we work with cities and we get paid by cities, but we try to encourage investment in cities. It's not just the city doing it. I mean, having local property owners invest in their city, having the local chamber invest, and local businesses invest, and then obviously the city returning that back out, through services.
Sure.
But I think
The money we get helps us to do more for the...
exactly, and I think it turns over,
We don't mind spending the money where it does good.
Well, and I think it in turn makes you money. I think by investing in your city, you're going to see those dollars come back. I've seen very few times where if it's wisely invested back into the city, that it's not worked out. Because I promise you, the ones that are doing really well right now have what y'all currently have. They have this traction. They have a lot of support from the locals. I just think you've got to keep that going for as long as humanly possible, because that really is what makes a successful town, no matter the size. It doesn't matter if it's 7,000 or 70,000. If you don't have those components right there, it's not going to work.
I would build on what Casey said earlier, though, about the downtowns and smaller towns. I don't think that universally they're all doing well. I think right now, small towns that are really fighting for it are doing really well. And the ones that are not very intentional about growth or about attracting growth or about building on the infrastructure that they currently have are really not doing well. Because I've worked in a lot of downtowns. The reason that Casey and I ended up working together is because I approached him because I've been working in downtowns for years. And I said, I'm working in so many downtowns where like the sidewalks are beautiful or the street lamps are beautiful and there's tumbleweeds rolling down the road because there's nobody there. And so here it is, the city has invested all these government federal dollars into
Road to
building.
nowhere.
And truly, into these vacant buildings. And so I think it has to do with a lot of things. I think building stock is a huge issue in a lot of places, and it feels like you have good buildings downtown. And then downtown has to become kind of a destination for it to be successful. And you've got enough retailers downtown to where people will come and be able to hit up 4 or 5 or 6 or in your downtown maybe 15 places before they go home. And so, again, it's a testament to, you say you don't want to take too much credit, but I think all the credit is due to something that you guys are doing because it's been really successful, and that's not universal right now. It really is. People are moving out of urban centers and they're moving back into rural areas, which is exciting, but it also is kind of putting the men against the boys because the cities aren't ready for it. Nobody's going to go back there. So.
Casey made a point this morning, I won't really live everything we did today, but the point you made was that you go in a place and they don't know you, but you start conversation, you say, what about this place? And they point out the negatives first. That certainly struck a note with me, is that I hope we can promote an atmosphere to where people want to accent the positives and eliminate the negatives in their thought train when they talk about their community. If you verbally abuse your community every time you're asked about it, before you point out anything good, what good is that? I mean,
It's
very
nothing but
detrimental.
toxic. It's very toxic, and you know, the example I gave, I've got friends that work for a lot of these retailers, and they don't have a shirt that says AutoZone or a shirt that says Kroger or Target. They just might have a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops, but they'll go and do research just like I do. I do the same thing. I sit at a restaurant or a bar or something like that and ask the person working there or someone nearby, well, what do you think of this place, or where do you go to shop? And then, you know, they'll just sit there and dog the town for 30 minutes. And I'm just thinking, this was that person's first stop. You know, so you caught them, their first step of market research in this town was asking you this question. The first thing out of your mouth was something negative. And I don't know how you fix that, but that can be very detrimental. It definitely can be, and that's something I always like to make cities aware of, is that you gotta have a good pitch, a positive pitch for your town for someone who's never been there before. Because the moment they step in, they ask you about it, and you're like, oh, there's nothing to do here. I can't believe, like, I still even live here or whatever. That's not a sales pitch to give to someone that might be locating a $30 million home improvement store here. You know, and so that's what I want to prevent.
The reason that struck a note with me, it's so fresh on my mind. We were in Decatur Friday night for a little birthday get-together for my wife's granddaughter. Well, we go to this Japanese place, and it's hibachi. The cook comes out, and one of the guys sitting by me said, where do you eat? Right over there at Five Guys, he said. It certainly wasn't where he was cooking food. And, you know.
It made you question the food a little bit, I bet.
After I ate his food, I was convinced Five Guys was pretty good, I think. But anyway, this just was on my mind that he had recommended another place right in front of us. You know, he didn't say, I can go over here and dine.
He doesn't eat there.
This time.
I think one of the best places to find out about a city is the community Facebook page. And I really will. I'll go and look all of our client cities. I'm on the HIP Portland page or the buy and resell Hamilton page or whatnot, because that's really where you find out what people think about all of the council's decisions and what they want to see in retailers and what they don't want to see. And I've had cities of 3,000 with people posted, well, I don't understand why we don't have a Longhorn. We want a Longhorn restaurant. But also we don't want the subdivision down the road. So let us keep all of our farmland, but we want more and more and more retailers. But conversely, I think that what we do really helps your messaging, because sometimes people just don't understand. I mean, you're in this every day, not full-time, but you devote brain space to it. And there are people, before I was in this industry, I didn't know what happened at city council meetings. I didn't understand what zoning was or government incentives. And so some of it is the patience to understand why your population doesn't understand what's good about Hamilton, or how you're trying, or why things can't change overnight. And so some of that I've seen in cities before, it's the confidence. And so if you're saying, hey, we're gonna go after some more retail, then once we land one, then they're like, oh, well,
Moving up in the world.
we
Since
do
we
actually
joined with
believe
you guys, we've made a concerted effort to try to sell our community better through the media. We've developed a page now, a web page, and we're updating it on a constant basis. If we have a happening in our community, we put that on the web page. And we have a problem in our community that people need to understand. We try to do that. These folks have moved back to Hamilton, and they're doing a good job going to the public for us. And Steve and Cindy were away for a while, and we missed their talents while they were gone, but they're back, and they're very much media people, and they're helping us promote as well as the web page we've set up. So a lot of good things are happening to promote Hamilton outside of Hamilton, not just through the newspaper or something like that that's kind of local, but we're doing a concerted effort to try to communicate to the outside world that we've got a good community here, and that it'd be worth taking a look at.
Well, you got at least two saying it today, so I promise you, like, that's what we're here for, and it's good to hear that that is important to you guys, because I can assure you it's good for the retailers to hear that.
And we want to, as we said this morning, support what's already here and have them have better ideas about how to be more successful in their own shops. And I think the pointers you gave this morning were right on track to help people.
We just got to get the word out. I think that's the main thing. You know, I like the group that we had here this morning, but my question for y'all is, how do we double that size? How do we do it, in 3 months from now and have it be, 6 people to 26 people?
Like we said, this is a real situation where it was a trial and error type day, but by and large, I think it's been successful in that we've reached some of our merchants, some of our property owners. Some of them didn't show up today after committing to be here, but that's their situation. They may have had hindrance and couldn't be here because they sounded like they wanted to be here. And then coming back to our council and kind of recap and especially bring up this feasibility study that's needed. I appreciate that, because that reinforces what we thought we needed to do. And since it came out today that these folks
that came from someone totally outside of NaviRetail. That was from someone just in the audience today asking about, and I think it's out of necessity. They just need it.
Yeah. Well, they've got about 200 to 300 students here all the time at their Bible college, and then they were putting those folks in dormitories and places that they built for them, houses that they rent, this kind of thing. But they're also bringing this large crowd in for these conventions.
Right.
And they're literally out of space, and we don't have a place for them to stay nearby.
Well, and when some of these hotels do things like that, they'll sometimes work out a rate with, these different people that would use it on a regular basis. So if the ramp had a consistent business to give them, they may not pay what's on the website or whatever for their rates. They may work out a deal between them where they get it for half price. And what the hotel's leveraging is, hey, I filled the whole property up year round, and that's good for me. And so that's what I'm saying is a lot of things we talk about are people working together, businesses working together. And so even if we land a hotel here, having them working with the ramp so that making sure they're, able to keep the hotel full, but the ramp's not paying, out the nose for their, for their rooms. And so that's where I think there's a lot of good conversations that have been had and to be had.